Tukutakia kila laheri ili uweze.
Uko hoja ni damu.
Pole. Nilikuwa sija kuona.
Mr. Speaker, I'm only doing what I think a good timekeeper could do. Mr. Speaker, there's a danger that we are going to be doing senior speeches through this statement and repeat them in the afternoon. Mr. Speaker, I think debating a statement which was based only on program, we are entering into an enclave of irrelevance, Mr. Speaker, and so I'd like to request your indulgence.
Okay, Senator. Just like I said, jaribu umalizie kwa sababu tutakuwa na muda kuanzia saa 8:30 tukifunga bunge.
Ndio. Na Speaker asiongee double standards zingine. Bwana Speaker, la mwisho nilikuwa nataka kusema kuhusikana na ile mambo ya kwamba mtu akiwa amesimamishwa hususan akiwa yeye ni anafanya kazi na akija hapa kama gavana. Tuko na muhula ni miaka 5. Bwana Speaker, nimeona ni ukweli kabisa ya kwamba sheria zinaangaliwa pande mbili. Ni kama panga ambayo inakata pande hii na inakata pande hii. Sisi kama bunge la Senate tumekuwa tukifanya kazi yetu kisawasawa. Lakini ninapofika wakati wa kwamba mtu ameletwa hapa na hususan magavana, inaonekana tunakuwa na sheria za pande mbili. Na mimi nataka kusema hivi, kama upande wa mtu ameletwa na kuna miaka kama 3 ama 4 ama mwaka mmoja umebaki, lakini Senate imeona ya kwamba lazima uwe impeached ama uachishwe kazi, kuna umuhimu, Bwana Speaker, wa kutafakari ya kwamba hatuwezi kuchukua nafasi hii kuweza kumpatia adhabu mtu mara mbili. Ukiwa umetolewa alafu ukatoka nje ukawacha kile kiti, mimi naona hiyo ni punishment ama ni adhabu ya kutosha. Na baadaye huo muhula wa miaka 5 ukiisha, ichukuliwe kama ambao Senate imeshamaliza ile impeachment yake ama kumwachisha kazi. Manake hiyo ni adhabu tayari. Alafu tukija upande wa kwamba ataendelea kufanya kazi, ikifika wakati wa uchaguzi mwingine apewe nafasi ili aweze kuangalia kama anaweza kujitetea ama anaweza kujifufua katika maisha. Isipokuwa isichukuliwe kama ambaye mtu anaweza kuharibiwa maisha ya kwamba alikuwa mwanasiasa na sasa asiwe mwanasiasa kabisa katika maisha yake. Ni jambo la kusikitika. Tunaona hivi sasa hivi ndugu yetu Sonko akiwa katika matatizo kama hayo, na ningependelea ya kwamba tusichukue mwelekeo kama huo. Sisi kama senator, wakati tukiwa tumefanya kitendo cha kile kumpatia adhabu kama ile, baada ya miaka 5 ikimalizika, basi iwe ashatumia muhula wake ule wa kwamba ameadhibiwa, ili wakati mwingine ukifika apewe nafasi ya kuweza kusimama. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Following your request, Senator Petronila, where I'll just give you 3 minutes so that we go to the next orders. Like I've said, the rest will have an opportunity in the afternoon, including Senior Counsel Mogeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. Indeed, it is a trying moment for Parliament, now Senate, because we are the only ones still sitting. We are in a campaign period, and therefore we have several activities down at the counties. And so trying to balance our campaign plans and coming to the House is a challenge. So I thank you for the indulgence. Mr. Speaker, mine is to thank the House and thank the members of the Senate for having provided a conducive environment for us to work, especially for us nominated senators, who we thought that coming to this House we shall just be there to be seen and not to be heard. But Mr. Speaker, we have seen that over the time the business of this House has mostly been handled by women senators, majority of whom are nominated. We want to thank our political parties that nominated us to this House, and we hope and pray, Mr. Speaker, that we did them proud. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the staff of Senate, who are very malevolent in their work and their attitude towards us. They made some of us who had never stepped in this house look like we know what we were doing in this house. They provided guidance at every step of the way. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues on the issue of impeachment. And we remember that what we have seen happening to Governor Waititu and Governor Sonko, that it may not happen again, that we take impeachment proceedings brought to this house with the seriousness that deserves, that even if it comes with the politics that usually accompany these impeachments, we remember that these are lives of people, and that going ahead will create complications for them that are that seem quite unfair. And I know that these issues are in court, so we may not speak too much on them. But Mr. Speaker, I pray that those who will be coming back here, that those of us who are going elsewhere, those of you who will be coming back here, the impeachment motions brought to this house for governors and even for the president and the deputy president, because this is the final house on those impeachments, that will handle this professionally and will handle this with a humane heart. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I want to wish all my colleagues who are proceeding on to campaign for various seats, I want to wish them well, and those who will come back here, I pray that you continue to do what you are meant to do and continue to serve your people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 8, the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 37 of 2021. Second reading.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2021, be now read a second time. The Speaker, this bill, just to mention a little bit of its journey, the bill was published on the 12th of August 2021, passed by the National Assembly and referred to the Senate on the 13th April 2022. The bill seeks to amend the Election Campaign Financing Act of 2013 in order to align it with the Elections Act of 2011, and also to enable its implementation, as the current law does not take cognizance of current socioeconomic and political structures which has hindered its full implementation. Speaker, campaign finance issues have significant impact on the quality of elections. Notably, without adequate financing, candidates and parties have little chance of campaigning effectively or conveying their messages to the voters. At the same time, state authorities and citizens have a legitimate interest in ensuring that the campaign finance system is equitable, transparent, and limits the potential for corruption. For this reason, the importance of such a bill cannot be gainsaid. Speaker, the Speaker, specifically, what is at stake in this bill is that clause 2 of the bill proposes to amend Section 2 of the Act by deleting the definition of expenditure.
What's your point of order, Senator Ledama?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hate to interrupt the majority leader, but I'm just trying to be a little bit relevant here in the sense that I personally do have a similar bill, which is actually in the Committee of the Whole. This bill, which is coming from the National Assembly, is indeed the majority's leader's bill, but I'm just wondering if we start the process now on this bill, yet my bill is on the second, is actually in the Committee of the Whole, waiting to be passed. Wouldn't it not be easier if we pick what is here and include it in my bill, which is still the same? And if you look at my bill was introduced way much earlier than this bill. It's just been in the pipeline, and really it's a Senate bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to object to this bill and request that the majority leader stands down this bill at this stage, and then we'll look at our bill, the bill for this House, because we put in a lot of time in that bill. And I think it will be much more practical, and mine is in a far much ahead process. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to request the majority leader to stand down this bill and we proceed with the other bill. Otherwise, we'll just be picking-ponking here and not really moving.
There is another intervention from Masinza.
Thank you, Speaker. I just, on the same note, I don't think we were very fair when we are doing what the leader is doing, because most of us, even the way Senator Ledama is saying, we normally go with bureaucracy, we normally go with presidency here. But sometimes we find ourselves in a very weird situation whereby bills are thrown away, bills are not considered in this House, just because if the leader of majority has a bill, that it needs to take priority over any other. Let all bills be considered. If it is not necessary, if there need to merge the bills, let them be merged. But this issue of giving priority to bills and leaving other bills, it has left me even on the platform. I've really felt so bad that my bill was there far beyond in last year, up to this time. Nobody has ever considered. But when the bills come here, you see bills around, people coerce in a form of a Senate Business Committee, and they decide on what to pick and what to leave.
What is your point of order?
Mine was on KEMSA bill, and I think...
I'm saying, what's your point of order now?
My point of order is that we collapse that thing, even if it comes from the leader of majority, and we see which way forward. Thank you.
Senator Mogeni is another intervention leader.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, last week on Thursday, you set a precedent by extending the life of Parliament by one more sitting, which is today. And Mr. Speaker, the reason why we adjourned is because we had business proceeding all the way to about 9:30 in the evening. And the reason why we adjourned to today, Mr. Speaker, is because we wanted ample time to have a motion of adjournment moved and we get an opportunity to make our remarks with ample time, Mr. Speaker. That was the main reason why we adjourned today. But looking at the order paper, Mr. Speaker, it has been packed with a lot of business, sending an indication that you want to take us through the same drill that we went through last week on Thursday. Mr. Speaker, we all watched on TV when the National Assembly did the adjournment. It was very orderly. They had very lean business that proceeded between 2:30 and 3:30. And at 3:30, the House adjourned and moved to the motion. And we had adequate time, members of National Assembly had adequate time to make their remarks on the floor. The Speaker, if you take the order paper as it appears today and take us through this business, this morning and the afternoon, we'll be taken to the same scenario we were in last week on Thursday. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what wisdom is guiding majority leader to pack the order paper with all these bills, while the gentlemen and gentle ladies agreement was that we just come here and look at the debt ceiling and the adjournment motion. Also, Mr. Speaker, I want you to also rule. I was serving as the chair of Law Society of Kenya when a regular committee that was looking into the cause of the 2007 electoral violence went around the country and prepared a report. I sat in that committee, Mr. Speaker. And the regular committee made a recommendation that we should not entertain amendments to election laws later than 6 months to an election. Now the amendments that we have here dealing with the election campaign financing and the elections amendment bill that is dealing with the registration of candidates for positions of governor, Senate nominations, All these have already been finalized. So, Mr. Speaker, what is really the wisdom of us coming here to debate election amendment laws 47 days to the elections? What is the wisdom, Mr. Speaker? And I want you to rule, Mr. Speaker, whether, even if this bill is moved through second reading, will the Committee of Justice, Legal Affairs, Human Rights have time to retreat, carry out public participation, and present a report to the floor? It's not possible, Mr. Speaker. So I want you to rule, Mr. Speaker, that we shouldn't spend a lot of time on these matters in vain, so that we can concentrate on the business that made us adjourn on Thursday, which is the motion of adjournment.
Senator Mazayo, there's another intervention. Leader.
Bwana Spika, sioni kama kuna faida yoyote ama haja ya kuweza kuona kwamba hapa ndani ya hii Senate tayari tuko na bill kama hiyo ambayo iko na ndugu yetu Ledama hia, na akiangalia ile anayoleta ni ile kutoka katika bunge la kitaifa. Sasa tunauliza kitu muhimu ni sasa sisi tuangalie ile bill ambayo imeletwa na huyu Ledama hapa ndani, ama tuangalie ile bill ambayo inaletwa na huyu kiongozi walio wengi. Bwana Spika, nataka nikiongea unisikize, manake naona yeye anaingilia sasa katikati. Kaa chini kidogo kama mtu mwingine anaongea. Zilizo sheria za bunge. Sasa mimi
Leader of majority, take your seat.
Yes, take it. Si heshima hata kidogo. Kama mwingine anaongea mwingine akae. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, nilikuwa nasema tu ya kwamba hakuna faida yoyote itaongezeka katika yale mageuzi ambayo nataka sisi tujadiliane hapa yanaolewa na kiongozi walio wengi. Tunasema tu ya kwamba tuliahirisha tukiwa na nia moja ya kuja hapa leo, kuja kuongea yale yote tuliofanya katika muhula huu wa miaka 5 ndani ya bunge la Senate. Kwa hiyo hii hoja anayoileta hivi sasa ikae kwanza, usiruhusu, na hivyo ndio tunakuomba ukate hii kesi. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Mwaura, leader, you'll still have to continue waiting. Senator Mwaura.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumetoka kuwa na hoja ambayo kiongozi walio wengi ameweza kuorodhesha ile miswada ambayo tayari tumeweza kupasisha, na hii ndio ripoti. Sasa hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna miswada tofauti ambayo ipo kwenye ratiba yetu sasa hivi ya shughuli za bunge, na uratibu huo ndio mara nyingi ambao unatumiwa kupasisha sheria ambazo sio nzuri kwa demokrasia na nchi. Na naunga mkono kwamba tumeshapatiwa wosia na tume huru kwamba miezi 6 kabla ya uchaguzi tusiweze kubadilisha zile kanuni za mchezo wa uchaguzi. Niseme hivi, huwezi ukabadilisha kanuni sasa hivi, sababu tayari watu wameshaorodheshwa. Hata leo saa 6 ndo majina yanaweza kuchapishwa katika jarida la serikali wale ambao ni wagombea. Sasa itakuwaje sasa hivi tunaanza kuzungumza kuwa kuna sheria ya vile ambavyo tutatumia fedha za campaign, na pia kuna miswada miwili. Hata mimi mwenyewe kuna mswada wa watu wenye ulemavu umepita katika kiwango cha pili, na pia nyingine imetoka kwenye bunge la kitaifa. Sasa Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri tumalizie leo ni kama kufunga shule, ni kumaliza muhula wa bunge ndipo tusonge mbele. Hayo mengine tayari ripoti imeshachapishwa, kiongozi walio wengi ameshaongea, tusonge mbele, wengine watakuja kuendelea kwa pale ambapo tumefikisha.
Senator Agnes Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important to put things into context. And I think what we're trying to do now is to try to move these bills at least to the point that they've been voted for and finished within the Senate, before Senate's in die. We're looking at 1 day today. That will happen if we have the numbers. If we don't, then it will not happen. We have heard from National Assembly that initiative is being put into place to ensure that most of this legislation in the next session doesn't have to start from the beginning. If that is true, of course, we cannot foretell what the future holds, but we need to also see what is coming. If that is true, it means if we push these bills to as much a point as possible, then the point of being able to put them into place later on becomes easier. So that means I have my right, Mr. Speaker, to speak. Please allow me to speak. I hear some of the senators, Senator Isaac Mora is saying, no, I have my opinion and not his. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the only logistics I see is the logistics of numbers. I think what we are doing holds merit. Only, I wish we would have been able to do it earlier. To the point of Senator Omugeni, and that we cannot make laws at least 60 days before election, that is right. But some of these laws that we make are for posterity. So it's only that we don't know what the future holds in store for us. It is true that we say today is the day to prepare for Sindai and talk about that, but we also have an order paper in front of us. So for me, I think the technicality is that we might not have the numbers. If we do have the numbers, it would be good. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you look at all these laws that are on the order paper, all the bills on the order paper, they're bills that members have spent a lot of time in constructing. We have the lifestyle audit bill, for example, that is on the order paper from Senator Faria, that is just waiting to be voted on. Let us all take also into consideration the effort that members have made. We have almost, I think, 16 bills that members have put enormous effort. They've worked at committee level, they've worked at individual level, they've been able to present at various committees and various sessions these bills that are prosperity. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with what one senator said before, that we really hope that at one point or another that these bills will come into fruition. Because most of these bills are for and pro-devolution, at least the ones we've come with in Senate, and most of the issues that are being addressed in these bills are issues that need to be addressed within the counties. So I hope that the team will be here, will be pushing, one, so that these bills don't die. For those that have progressed to National Assembly, for those that are within Senate, it would have been a nice, tidy finish if we're able to vote for them. If we're not able to vote them, we pray that they do not fall off completely, they don't die at Sindai, and that they can progress in the other session if the two speakers agree, as I had the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Muturi, suggest, or Primet, he said something like that. Then we come to the situation that we have now, that even these bills, when those who come to this Senate come back, can they push for them? Can they push for them either by picking some of these? I know we have the social and humanity bill that was introduced by Senator in the last session, 2013, from Mombasa. And it came again, I think it was Senator Abshiro who tried to push it. It didn't see through the light of day. Sometimes maybe it's impossible to have them see through it. So let us balance all these things, Mr. Speaker, even as we talk about, yes, the importance of discussing and us being given an opportunity of Sindai. That is true, that you said that we meet so that we do that. But if we can do both, if we can kill two birds with one stone, then that would be the best way to go. That is going to be based on the technicality of numbers. If we have the numbers and we're able to, I think we have both the morning session and afternoon session, I think we can do quite a lot. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, let me give guidance on this. I do agree with the contributions that I've made, that actually we did adjourn the Senate last Thursday because we wanted to give members ample time to say bye-bye, those who are leaving the Senate and going to other stations. And therefore, it's important that we have time for that. So I want to rule that we make sure we conclude everything else by 3, so that from 3 onwards, members have then an opportunity to make a contribution as we adjourn Senate. It is so directed. Okay, Leader of Majority.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the order paper is a product of the Senate Business Committee. It's not the Leader Majority. I think that needs to be made very clear. Mr. Speaker, this motion is here courtesy of Senator Lekina. himself. And so, Mr. Speaker, you know, this kind of, I don't expect Olekina to come back here and say that we should. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, just...
What's your point of order? We have to move.
And yet, it better be a point of order, because I know sometimes where that...
No, it's not that you know sometimes. Mr. Speaker, I think you gave a ruling on this matter. I think it's a little bit hypocritical for the majority leader to go back again and reinvent the wheel, because we've agreed. You know, I objected to this bill on the basis that there is a bill which has already progressed. And my argument was actually enhanced further by the argument of Senator Mogeni and the other senators. So I think coming back after you've given a direction is really taking us back. So I have no problem if your direction is for us to continue and to finish this business. And I know, yes, I sit in the House business and we agreed to have these things here. But that doesn't mean that my mind is static. The more I think about it, I felt that it was worthless for it to continue being on the paper, yet we have another bill. But since you've given a direction, I think the majority leader should, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, you could listen to me. What I was saying is that you've given a direction that we move forward. Why then should the majority leader go back again and point a finger and say that I shouldn't be raising these concerns? You know, my mind is not static. It grows, and the more I think about it, I think it's irrelevant for it to continue staying there. So, Mr. Speaker, I think you should repeat your directive so that we don't go back and forth.
I think it's so clear, Senator Ledama.
No, it's not clear to me.
Proceed.
It is not clear to the majority leader.
Proceed, leader.
Just don't mention my name.
Mr. Speaker, just look who is coming back. It's not me. I've come on my time. Mr. Speaker, let me use this opportunity also to inform members that the reason why we are using this moment in the morning is that, as you have ruled, Mr. Speaker, the Synodai is in the afternoon, so we will use the opportunity in the afternoon for the Synodai, or Synodie. Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate what I was doing before, to continue from where I had reached, Mr. Speaker, which was to explain what is going on in the bill. And the bill, Mr. Speaker, specifically in Clause 2, proposes to amend Section 2 of the Act by deleting the definition of expenditure committee, which has been defined as follows. In the old Act, Mr. Speaker, expenditure committee means a committee established by a candidate, a political party or a referendum committee to regulate spending by a candidate, a political party or referendum committee during an election or referendum campaign period, as the case may be. Clause 3 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 7 of the Act, which provides for establishment of a party expenditure committee and its functions. Clause 4 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 8 of the Act, which provides for establishment of an independent candidate expenditure committee and its functions. Clause 5 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 9 of the Act, which provides for establishment of the referendum committee, expenditure committee, and its functions. Clause 6 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 10 of the Act, which provides for submission of expenditure reports to a political party and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, by a candidate. So, Mr. Speaker, as you can see, this is making amends to make sure that we smoothen the path for financing of elections. Clause 7 of the bill proposes to amend Section 16 of the Act, which provides for the disclosure of funds by deleting the requirement to issue receipts for any contribution exceeding 20,000 shillings, keeping of records of harambes, and disclosure of funds. The Speaker, Clause 8 of the bill proposes repealing Section 17 of the Act, which provides for surplus campaign funds. Section 17 requires a candidate, political party, or referendum committee to notify IEBC of any surplus funds which within 3 months after an election or a referendum. It also specifies where such surplus will be channeled to. In the case of a political party campaign finance committee and a party candidate, to the political party, and in the case of an independent candidate or a referendum committee, to a charitable organization. Clause 9 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 21 of the Act, which provides for dispute resolution The section provides that any person may lodge a complaint with IEBC alleging a violation of the Act, and that IEBC may on its own investigate a violation of the Act. Clause 10 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 25 of the Act, which provides for registration and dissolution of expenditure committees. The section provides that IEBC shall prescribe the procedures for registration and dissolution of expenditure committees. Clause 12 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 27 of the Act, which provides for audit of accounts relating to campaign expenses. Such accounts may be audited by the Auditor General on request by the IEBC. Clause 13 of the bill proposes to repeal Section 28 of the Act, which provides for claims and objections to any other related to campaign financing expenditures submitted by a candidate, political party, or referendum committee. Clause 14 of the bill proposes to amend Section 29 of the Act to empower IEBC to make regulations on auditing of accounts relating to campaign financing and the procedure for making claims, objecting to any matter relating to campaign finance expenditures. The Speaker, as we had agreed in the House Business Committee, we are trying to bring both bills, Mr. Speaker, to the level of division or third reading, and then we can now bring them together to final division. And Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to support this bill, Mr. Speaker, as we go into campaigning. It's important that we remove those unnecessary conditions for a candidate that make them difficult. And some of these things, Mr. Speaker, may not be even possible. But for the future, we are not legislating for ourselves, Mr. Speaker. We are legislating also for the next House and for posterity. And so with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request Senator Farhia to second. I thank you.
Senator Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, regardless of what time we bring a bill, you know, our bills have to go back to National Assembly before they become a bill. And since this one has already gone through the National Assembly and it's just here on its final stages, I think if we want the bill to go through, I think we need to support. And Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
I propose the question. Order, Senator Mwaura. Take your seat, or you want to freeze? I propose the question, which is that the Election Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 37 of 2021, be read a second time. Senator, you know the names have been, so I don't know whether they want to contribute. Now, Cherargei, or this was before? Now, okay.
Sorry. I think there is a problem with that mic at dispatch. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to oppose this motion or this amendment act, the Election Campaign Finance Amendment Bill, National Assembly number 37 of 2021. Mr. Speaker, and I need your protection from the senators who are consulting. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to oppose this amendment, Elections Campaign Finance Amendment Bill, National Assembly number 37 of 2021. On one issue, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that under the curricular report, when they did after 207, 208, we were advised that some of the election laws and even replacement of commissioners in IEBC should be done at a certain period, even 6 months before the general election. The fact that this amendment comes at this time is a bad timing, and it comes at a day that the Senate is supposed to have seen a die. So some of us who are keen is that sometimes, Mr. Speaker, this opportunity can be used to pass the laws that contravenes or in a way doesn't argue well with the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this Campaign Finance Amendment Bill 2021 from the National Assembly, we had an opportunity to do so before. I think Senator Ledama's bill is on the Committee of the Whole. And Mr. Speaker, it doesn't make sense at all. This is the wrong timing. IEBC is now already preparing itself for the general election, possibly on 9th August 2022. And therefore, it is not in good faith that we are discussing this bill at the stage. Even look at, Mr. Speaker, the time that we'll need to allocate to ensure that this bill goes through comb and tooth of the colleagues and senators, because most of our colleagues, Mr. Speaker, are either in the villages or in towns campaigning, Mr. Speaker. Secondly is that I want to make an observation that Senator Naomi Shionga said about us, and I hope this not will be the tradition in the next Senate, for us who will remain here, that we normally give priority to the National Assembly bills. Yet our bills, whenever they go there are two things. Either they stole our bill, alleging that it's money bill, or they plagiarize our bills, or, Mr. Speaker, the third, in quotes, they steal our bills, and that is why you see them reproducing our bills. And I hope the next Speaker and the next Senate shall ensure these things does not happen. Mr. Speaker, the final issue I wanted to make, I have seen the amendment on the Principal Act, but deleting Section 16, and therefore, a candidate, political party, and a referendum committee shall disclose the amount and source of contribution received for a campaign for a nomination, an election, or referendum, as the case may be. A candidate or a political party referendum committee which fails to disclose funds or donations are required under this act commits an offense, Mr. Speaker. I hope the promoters of BBI, Mr. Speaker, are listening to this, because up to date, Mr. Speaker, no one has told us how many funding was being used, Mr. Speaker, for the BBI charade that we saw across the country. It is allegedly that more than 10 billion was used through BBI that ended up being declared null and void and constitutional by the Supreme Court of Kenya. All courts across the country did declare, Mr. Speaker. So I think even if this bill was to pass in the next house, it is very important that in future we shall not be treated to circus, Mr. Speaker, where a few people use state resources, use government resources to push for a referendum. Even what we are seeing across the country, Mr. Speaker, some of the people are using government resources and vehicles, Mr. Speaker, to do campaigns, which is illegal, Mr. Speaker, because now this bill or this law will allow, Mr. Speaker, a proper accountability mechanisms, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, so that when people fundraise or do donations to the campaign, Mr. Speaker, they must be disclosed who they are. Because sometimes, Mr. Speaker, even at the county level and the national level, some of these people who fund, Mr. Speaker, some of the campaigns of our colleagues, of people who want to run government, Mr. Speaker, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, these are people who want to promote what we call state capture and push for business interests, Mr. Speaker. So this one, the Section 16 should have also this amount of source and contribution of donations, Mr. Speaker, is very important so that our people know that if Senator Ngugi Isaac receives donation, we need to know it is from the state coffers, who gave it, from which source, what was the intention, what was the purpose. I think accountability, and therefore will be complying with leadership and integrity, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I've seen people complaining that some individuals who are running for highest offices, others are running for county offices, are in a way misusing or abusing the state resources, Mr. Speaker. I think when this campaigning finance amendment bill, this deletion of Section 16 or Clause 16, if it comes to law in the next parliament, Mr. Speaker, it will give opportunity. But I think as a matter of moral authority, even without passing this law and in the spirit of leadership and integrity, for us who have access to public resources or state resources or facilities that have been assigned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I saw some article, I don't know whether this law has captured, that presidential candidates are being given special utility vehicles, Mr. Speaker, SUVs, a number of them, and I don't know whether in future we need to capture that in the law, so that when presidential candidates, they are provided round-the-clock security services, they are given SUVs, number of vehicles, they are given funding, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we must be told how they get that access to SUVs and other state facilities and resources to use for campaigns, because we don't want to blur the line between the campaign for individuals and where state resources and issues are being used. Mr. Speaker, and therefore, I think this coming of Clause 16 is very important, but I wish it would have come early when the BBI promoters were working around the country using state resources, campaigning up to more than 10 billion, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on section 14, where section 29 of the Principal Act is amended in subsection, the new paragraphs prescribe the manner of audit of accounts. So I don't know, Mr. Speaker, this is interesting in Kenya because when you attend a fundraiser, you take tea with your supporters in the village, Mr. Speaker, and all of us are actively campaigning. I don't know how the Auditor General will come and audit. And you know, Mr. Speaker, with the issue of spraying the ground, ama kuchunga ground, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how that audit will be done by the Auditor General or which office, Mr. Speaker, because whenever you are campaigning, Mr. Speaker, this aspect must be practical. Because whenever you go to a fundraising as a candidate, you host people in your home, Mr. Speaker, maybe for consultative meeting, and they end up taking chai and mandazi. They end up hiring tents, hiring public address system, Mr. Speaker. We need to be certain how those issues are audited. Does it mean whenever you want to give handouts, Mr. Speaker, or to give something, or to give a stipend to the people who came, or to provide them with transport and food, Mr. Speaker, does it mean that you must provide those receipts to the Auditor General? And I think that is the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker, because we have disclosed the source of where you're getting your funding, but how do you spend and how much do you give it? Because sometimes we give it, and therefore sometimes how do you audit, where maybe in a number of occasions, Mr. Speaker. So I think another issue, Mr. Speaker, is on the, where, like my party, the former party that we used to love so much before it died a death that we can't explain, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of the House. And I know my brother, Senator Ngugi Isaac, is alleging that he's alive, but some of us cremated that party, Mr. Speaker. For example, Mr. Speaker, ODM and Jubilee, they have been funded for the last 10 years or 5 years through the political fund by political parties fund. Where does that fund go? For example, like a Jubilee party which is collapsing, how do we audit so that the money that we give political parties fund, Mr. Speaker, does not end up being used for the campaign the way we are seeing, Mr. Speaker? So the law should have included, and that is why this bill should collapse the way it is today, because we need to fine-tune so that if a party is funded, where do they put those funds? In any case, where they are using those funds to campaign, is it allowed by the law? Is it audited, Mr. Speaker? And I think that is where we must agree on the placement, Mr. Speaker. And then finally prescribe the procedure for claims objecting to any matter related to campaign finance expenditure submitted by a candidate, political party, or referendum committee. And therefore, even during BBI, Mr. Speaker, the committee that was concerned, the promoters, should have given the Auditor General the receipts and the expenses to show that where did they get the funds, how it was used, how it was audited, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, as I conclude and reject this bill, call upon the IEBC to continue being vigilant to ensure people who hold offices, people who have access and disposal to state resources, Mr. Speaker, do not end up using those state resources to unduly and unfairly campaign over the others, including, Mr. Speaker, the security agencies. You saw the other day, even in Jacaranda grounds, when the Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker, were holding their rally, Mr. Speaker, the police, out of compliancy, ensured that the violence thrived, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we must agree,
Senator
Mr. Speaker.
You know, you are talking about very many things going into
I was
relevance.
just concluding, Mr. Speaker.
No, but you are concluding on a wrong note. You know, how does Jacaranda
No, I was just
come into,
urging IEBC, Mr. Speaker, since you had said today, I don't know, Mr. Speaker, you had said there was leverage today, so I don't know, was it applying to specific members or all of us?
No,
Because I was just
leverage does not mean we suspend the standing orders. It's just you need to be relevant. You know, you are bringing Jacaranda.
But I was just concluding, Mr. Speaker, by saying,
conclude, yes.
Since we are in campaign period and these election laws, in a way, should assist our smooth running of election. And I think part of the security and provision is I'm calling IEBC to be vigilant, especially during electioneering period, Mr. Speaker. But I think this Election Campaign Act should collapse today. Let's wait for the next parliament, Mr. Speaker, so that when we come and fine-tune one of those issues, and I can see Senator Omogeni is smiling, because allegedly some of his party members and some of party leaders of ODM were allegedly involved in such situations. So, Mr. Speaker, I oppose Mr. Speaker, I oppose this bill, and therefore call upon the National Assembly to, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly.
There's a point of order. Although he has concluded that you are the next, do you want to make the point of order, or you want to wait? And
I was just making the final
Mr. Speaker,
sentence.
Mr.
Okay,
Speaker,
Senator Mogeni.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay,
Speaker,
take your seat.
Mr. Speaker, Senator Cherargei is a lawyer, and there's a way that the lawyers. Senator Faki tells me he's a junior lawyer admitted 1 year ago. So, you know, there are some dropping of names that happens on the floor that can send the wrong message, especially when my name is being cited by Senator Cherargei. Mr. Speaker, you heard him cite the name Senator Omogeni and some ODM leaders in the mix. Then he mentions something about Jacaranda. And if you read the answer, you cannot pick what he's saying. I don't know what Senator Cherargei took this morning, but if he wanted to make a point about Senator Omogeni and any leader, can he be specific so that I can respond to him? Otherwise, he seems to be really mixed up this morning. I don't know what he took this morning.
Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I was trying to follow Senator Cherargei, and I was getting high. You know, I was wondering whether he smoked some good marijuana in the morning or what, because he was not really making sense. He was completely incoherent. I didn't know what he was talking about. You know, he says Senator Omogeni, he says Jacaranda, he says everything. Seriously, can we just remain relevant? Mr. Speaker, I think this leeway you're giving us, sometimes it's messing everything up. So really, I don't have a problem legalizing marijuana. I think it's a good thing, but appearing that you're smoking it, maybe we should give you a bottle of Glenfiddich. Might put your head pepper.
Senator Cherargei, I want to agree with what members are saying. You be clear in what you want to say, and please conclude so that we make progress.
No, Mr. Speaker, it is dangerous that you are likely agreeing with them that I'm smoking marijuana. I don't know whether you are agreeing on that part, because I don't smoke anything. Mr. Speaker, the only smoke I smoke is when I was cooking in the village kitchen. So, Mr. Speaker, what I was just saying, I just said allegedly, and I think members should listen keenly and carefully. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because I don't want to drag and we have a heavy agenda ahead of us, is that I oppose this amendment. It is wrong timing. It is not made in good faith. Let us collapse this bill until the next session of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Then we can have an opportunity of going through it. And I know Majority Leader, God willing, will be around, so he can remain as an institutional memory and representative of West Pokot and ensure that this issue is put to conclusion in the next session of Parliament. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Senator Mogeni.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I sympathize with the position that Majority Leader is this morning. Ordinarily, Mr. Speaker, this is something that we should applaud and say this is a good bill and we support. The only problem, Mr. Speaker, is the timing. The timing at which this bill is coming before us. Really, going through it, especially the one dealing with the election campaign financing bill, there's nothing really big one can say about it. It's amending principally two sections of the Act, 16 and 14. I mean, Section 29 and I believe Section 16 of the Act. But, Mr. Speaker, the problem is, as I said, the problem is the timing, Mr. Speaker. We are in the middle of a fairly heated campaign period between two very strong contestants for the seat of presidency. And we don't want to send the wrong signals, Mr. Speaker, that we are trying to bring laws that could send wrong signals to the public that we are trying to change the rules of the game midway. I think that's the major problem, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I did say earlier that regular committee that was here in 2007, when I was serving as president of the Law Society of Kenya, he did, if you read through the report, he did warn us, Mr. Speaker, that we should be very cautious and even reluctant to amend any election laws 6 months to the elections. And the reason was, Mr. Speaker, that anytime you try to amend any sections of the election laws, your opponents think you are being mischievous. They read mischief, even if there is nothing. And Mr. Speaker, speaking from this side, in Azimio, Mr. Speaker, on a period that the whole country is almost, making a conclusion that Raila will be our next president, the 5th. Why do you want to amend these laws to give credit to our opponents who may say that we want to change the election laws to frustrate them? There isn't really need. And then, Mr. Speaker, the point number 2, and I hope the next leadership will treat senators differently. You know, this is a bill that came from National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. And I don't know why we want to be treated like people who are here to sanitize and push forward and process anything that comes from the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, anytime we send a bill from here, Senate, to the National Assembly, they take time to go through it. They don't rush it. It will be sent to committee, the relevant committee, and a report will be tabled on the floor before that bill is considered. This particular bill, Mr. Speaker, we want to process it on the floor of the House, even before the relevant committee has taken views from the public, Mr. Speaker, and complied with the constitutional imperatives of public participation, and presented a report before the floor for consideration. That, Mr. Speaker, opens up these amendments to a challenge from our courts of law, Mr. Speaker. And you know what the courts have said over and over again, that you cannot ignore the concept of public participation in legislation. Mr. Speaker, I would have wished that those who would be lucky to be back to this House will have more caucuses from either the majority side and the minority side. Because some of the things we are saying on the floor, Mr. Speaker, would have been dealt with at a caucus. If we had a caucus of the minority side and a caucus of the majority side, some of these things could have been discussed and a way forward agreed on. The risk